If Sonic Mania is an homage to OG Sonic game, Penny's Big Breakaway is an homage to all the PS1 and PS2 platformers you could possibly think of made in the modern age.
As of like July last year, they raised $95,000 US for a wildlife trust. It's really great to see like a game that is environmentally friendly actually like walk the walk and make an impact in real life too.
They basically came out with a game called Let's Build a Zoo.
Does it hold up for the people in your Zoo Tycoon anonymous group?
Like the Zoo Tycoon Collective, please, on Reddit. The 200 people on the Zoo Tycoon Reddit, like rise up, let's play Let's Build a Zoo.
Welcome to the 20M Podcast, the show about video games and the people behind them. I'm your host for today, Rino, and I'm joined today by our, as usual, other host, Arief. Hello.
Why am I the other host? You
other
said
amazing
other host
host.
and like
Other amazing
other
host.
host. All right. Hello, everybody.
The
How is
other
everybody?
host.
Hello to the YouTube comments. Hello to our Spotify listeners. Hello to all the folks that apparently listen to the podcast and only tell me when I see them in person.
That's nice.
I know, it's actually really nice, but it's always like, oh, that's embarrassing. I didn't know you listened to this.
How are you doing, Arief?
I'm doing really good. I've got like I ran out of mugs because I haven't done the dishes. Like, sorry everybody, gross Arief. I didn't do the dishes last night when I need to. All my mugs are used, but I'm using this nice little like Kingdom Hearts, this beautiful Kingdom Hearts 3.
Is that
like,
official Kingdom Hearts or is that like
no, it's official.
Teespring Kingdom Hearts?
It's official. It's official. It's official.
Okay,
Disney oriented. So I'm drinking my
cool.
coffee out of one of these little cups. How are you? Clearly, you were also taking notes on the video game paraphernalia here for water consumption. Nice Pikachu mug.
Yes, this one's from the Pokemon Cafe at Nihonbashi in Tokyo.
You think you're so cool.
No, I don't. I've used this gimmick 100 times. Like every work video call, every stream, every whatever. It's just it's like, hey, that's Pikachu.
I love it. It's like, hey, I'm a big flippin' nerd. I need y'all to know that.
So, nerd stuff aside, or rather, nerd stuff included. Let's talk about what we've been doing recently, Arief. So, last week we did was last week the week before at this time?
I think it was the week before, but whatever.
Yeah. We did our International Women's Day /month coverage where we talked about 5 different games, I think, 5 or 6 that we found via Wings, because Wings did like a really cool showcase on Steam for the month, which is very cool. I personally really liked that episode.
Yeah, and I think it was just so heartwarming because I think we were chatting about this like after the episode and even before the episode, right? But like whenever we do stuff here on the podcast, we usually try to cover, the next big thing, and like we try to get a guest on to supplement the next big thing. But there was something about playing a lot of games. We haven't done that in quite a couple episodes. But to me, again, it's just this whole podcast, the whole 20M podcast is supposed to be highlighting games and the people behind them, right? And so like I just love how we were able to chat not just about amazing games made by women, but like some of our dev friends who are building some phenomenal games. So it just warms my heart that we're able to do that on this platform. Go check out
that was really cool.
That episode. Like that one was like a fun, here's some of the games, here's some of the people, here's some of the faces, and like here's stuff to look buy right now or look forward to, all made by women.
And speaking of turning the tables were turned as well when we were on Malaysia radio station radio station, BFM, the business radio station. I'm trying to think of the number, but I think it doesn't matter because the frequency would change depending on which region you're listening to in Malaysia. Anyway, you can find them on Spotify, wherever you listen to your podcast. They also have an app, but we were specifically on the GG Well Played show together with Hanif Baharudin. And the two of us, and we talked about video game podcasting, I suppose. A bit of a meta episode, I think, for GG Well Played.
Yeah, it was so funny because we were talking mostly about the podcast format, right? And like games media. But Rino, I know so BFM is one of those for the Malaysian audience that is out there, right? For the Malaysian 20M podcast listeners, BFM's like a really big deal locally because like that's like, independent radio, and they've like grown from such small size to where they are now, and it's really respected because it is like a bit more professional, a bit more put together, but also covers a wide spectrum of things in the country, and they're also a great news outlet. But I know that one was a cool one for you. How did you feel about getting the opportunity to be on live radio, like in the car, people are driving at 9 p.m. turn up the volume, bam, it's Rino. How'd you feel about that?
I mean, like, I personally really, really like BFM. Not just saying it because we're on the episode. I've been listening to him for years. Like I think when we first got on the call with Hanif, like both of us were respectively like fangirling, fanboying over like the fact that we were on air and like hearing his voice. I'm like, dude, I've heard your voice like so many times when you covered Like a Dragon recently, when you covered like Cyberpunk like a couple years ago. It was like my pandemic, like can't go back to Malaysia. Like I feel close to home via listening to news. And they do news like global news as well on their other segments. But yeah, the video game podcast they do is really cool because yeah, they try to do like breaking news and they try to work with other people in the industry. Like we know Kakucho Pere is like a regular on their segment as well. So that was really nice. And when the episode came out, I know Hanif let us both know, and we had like separate listening parties. Like I was listening with my mom, and then you were with your housemate, I believe. But the other thing was they actually re-aired the show over the weekend. I think it was yesterday.
Oh.
And I found this out because my mom sent me a voice note, which was a recording of the podcast she was hearing on in the car.
No way. That's
That was so
awesome.
funny. I was like, I don't know. She sent me 2 voice notes, which my mom never does. And I played it, and I'm like, that's my voice. And then the message came through and was like, it's airing now. I'm like, oh, that's so cool.
That's awesome. And I think like my biggest takeaway is like, it's just so, again, major love to the BFM team, major love to Hunter for asking us to be on that, because it's like, it's just so cool. When I looked at the past episodes, it's like, I think Zan and Alif just did their episodes right before us as well. And I know our whole shtick on that podcast was like, hey, we're here to talk about why we started 20M. And the whole point of it was also to kind of like be supplementary to the rest of the media ecosystem. And so to be able to like be next some, again, amazing local journalists like, you know, Zan and Alif, but also to be on our podcast, to be on another podcast at BFM, like that's just the most like Southeast Asian, let's build this together kind of like scenario. So that's what I love. But that's crazy that we were on radio. What a weird thing.
Yeah, really surreal. But yeah, if you guys are listening to this right now, you can still check it out. It's on Spotify. You can use the BFM website or the app as well to find it, and we'll leave a link in the notes as well.
Cool.
Moving on to this week's episode. So, I mean, it's great that you mentioned earlier that we don't normally do these episodes where we just talk about a ton of games at once, but I think today is going to be a chance for us to go back to form in that sense. So I know you've played a couple, I've played a couple, but I'd love for you to start, Arif, because the games you've played, I've actually not played yet. So tell us about the first game you've been playing recently.
Yeah, the first game that I wanted to bring up is something that's been kind of sitting on my PlayStation for a while, but I finally got the chance to play it, and that's the game called Penny's Big Breakaway. And so this is an awesome kind of platformer game that I think it got announced, and I don't know if it was shadow dropped. I think it was announced before, but it got hashed up at a Nintendo Direct, and then I think it dropped either that day or that same week or something like that. But it's basically by the developers called Evening Star. And for those that don't know this, because I didn't know this until I looked it up, like when I was looking up the trailer or whatever have you, but it was these are basically the devs from Sonic Mania. And so after Sonic Mania, they started their own company and created Penny's Big Breakaway, which I think is the first IP under the new company. And for those that don't know Sonic Mania, and like, look, you know, you and I have met Sonic multiple times in person at so many events. At this point, we're best friends with Sonic the Hedgehog. You know, like it's going to be our annual Tokyo Game Show photo from here until forever. But Sonic Mania is one of those really, really cool ones that came out. I think it was pandemic, or like, no, it was before a pandemic, I think. But one of those ones that was like a return to form for OG Sonic, like homages to Sonic 1, 2, and 3, if you will. And it was in a retro style, and it just took the world by storm. And like, I know Sonic fans, new and old Sonic fans, look back at that game as like the perfect culmination, if you will, of like what Sonic is. And those are developers that like are non-traditionally Sega developers, right? So anyway, after the huge success of Sonic Mania, they started their own studio and they created Penny's Big Breakaway. And let me tell you, Reno, if Sonic Mania is an homage to, you know, a reference to the OG Sonic game, Penny's Big Breakaway is an homage to all the PS1 and PS2 platformers you could possibly think of made in the modern age. So I've been playing a lot of that. It's been really exciting.
She looks really cute. I just looked her up. She kind of looks like, gives me like Mega Man vibes as well. So I don't know if that's a reference or an homage as well to another, big platforming game. And then she's got like a yo-yo kind of. Yeah. Is that like her main like battle mechanic?
Yeah, I'll describe the game a little bit. And actually, before we get too deep, again, major love to the folks at Private Division. They provided us a review code, and I love the Private Division catalog. I like was chatting with our 2K rep, our Take-Two rep, and I was like, look, everything Private Division touches, I feel like is gold. So love to that like publishing company. But in terms of the game itself, so basically you play as Penny, and it's such a wacky, it almost reminds me of like Katamari and its like wackiness in its intro. But you are Penny, you have a yo-yo performance that you are going to perform to the Emperor. Something goes wildly wrong, and now you have to run from the police, which are like a bunch of chicken
Oh
as
my
well that are
God.
like. But there's this whole concept of like you're doing yo-yo for performance, and every stage ends with like a little like quick performance of your yo-yo thing. But your yo-yo is your main mechanic, so similar to games like Sonic, if you will. There's like level 1-1, 1-2, 1-3, and then world 2, and then 2-1, 2-2, etc., etc. But each level is basically get from point A to point B in this 3D world, where your yo-yo is your mechanic to traverse. So it does the thing where you can double jump by holding the yo, like the yo, spinning the yo-yo in the air, so you can double jump to the next one. You can dash as well by throwing your yo-yo forward, and it's really cool because when you're playing on like controller, for example, it's your right stick. So you move around with your left stick, so you're walking around in 3D space, and then your right stick can act as your yo-yo, so you can turn in different directions.
Okay.
So it's kind of a weapon traversal mechanic, and then obviously there's power-ups, and it's just so creative in the way that like you use the yo-yo. But it's so fascinating how the developers made it also so it's kind of like it uses logic in its easiest format, where it's like, oh, I'm gonna dash this way and then hold my yo-yo and then jump over the next platform. Like, it is such a culmination of good platformers that if you think you could probably master that like triple jump dash scenario, you can almost do it in like the beginning of the game, if you will. So yes, that's the yo-yo, that's the gameplay, and it's been treating me so well so far.
That's super cool. I mean, I think it looks really refreshing, and it's rare to see new IP, especially in this season of remakes, rebirths, I don't know, recatalogs of previous IPs, and just see this fresh one come out. And I had no idea that this was even a thing, honestly. But so you really liked the game, but was there anything that you felt like could be improved upon, especially as someone who's played a lot of platforming games?
Yeah, and it's so funny because this one I'll think about this, like I'll start with the limitations, but the limitations weirdly kind of step back into why I love this game, or I've been loving this game. So I think right off the get-go, you can kind of tell it's not it's tough to say low budget, but it's the one specific thing that I'm going to attribute this to is kind of like the graphical style and the visuals. It almost feels like just a little bit flat. This is for my Malaysian audiences, and this is definitely going to be a little bit mean and uncalled for, but I don't know if y'all have been to Petra Science. I haven't been to Petra Science in forever, but basically it's our local, I don't even know how to describe Petra Science.
It's
I'm
our
not even
local
going to
like science like every major city has like a science exploration, like let's make science fun for little kids, right? And I have not been there since I was like 8 either. This is a real deep cut, but what are you trying to say?
like the graphics in Penny's Big Breakaway remind me of some of the 3D graphics in Petra Science, where they're trying to teach you about like, here's how a molecule like attaches to another.
That
Where
is the worst.
the lighting is just a little bit flat. The like there's like kind of, you can kind of tell it's like a 3D asset or all that kind of stuff. I'm not gonna say it's that bad, but just in a very specific technical way, it just seems like the whatever lighting that they use don't fully bring out some of the textures or some of the character models like as well. And that's like a last mile polish, bring it to the next step kind of thing. And I was kind of like, oh, I can kind of see maybe they rushed it out, or maybe they ran out of development budget and they kind of nailed the rest of the stuff instead. And so I started this by being like, oh, it feels a bit very indie, very small, like a bit they were dreaming too big with what they were trying to build. And then after you get past the third or fourth level, that stuff doesn't matter at all. Like, the gameplay is king, and in this scenario I've had very few instances where the gameplay has made me angry and the gameplay feels janky, where I think they know exactly what they're trying to do. And the graphical style, even though it is creative and it's actually really fun the way they cut around the corners, the gameplay of Penny's Big Breakaway is just such a perfect mix of all the previous platforms that I've ever played in my life, that it just feels so incredibly natural and almost magical at this point that they were able to pull it off in that way. So it's graphical limitations, or it's like indie-ish limitations that I don't know, make it like that stuff doesn't matter because they're masters of gameplay. And it's one mechanic I'm going to just describe is like, you are timed from one level to one level, so you get time scores, even though it's like 3D, even though there's like side quests and if you will to get around. But I really want to look up YouTube videos right now, but I can totally see speedrunners going insane with this, where I'm walking around, I'm using my yo-yo, it's like, oh, there might be a little like spring thing over there that I'm going to go and get, right? But if you really master the speed and the mechanics of Penny's Big Breakaway, you can probably get from point A to point B super quickly in like just like a minute or so. So that to me is a testament to how much care these developers have for traversal mechanics, and how they've mastered it in their experience with Sonic Mania and probably some other titles, and brought it to this game.
Super cool. So is this kind of like one to look out for, one to check out for sure?
Yeah, I think so. And I'll end my Penny's Big Breakaway kind of like spiel by saying like I lost it when I was going through one of the levels and it was super unassuming. I didn't know what was going to happen. Bam, a giant boulder comes out from the back and your camera is at the front and you're basically running towards the camera. And I'm like, this Crash Bandicoot reference is flipping awesome. You know, and because, you know, we've talked about Crash. We had a whole episode of Crash Bandicoot and how much that property means to you and I. But, you know, it takes some amazing stuff like from Banjo-Kazooie and Donkey Kong Country, which are also some of my favorite platformers of all time, where it's the collectibles around the corner, the hidden places, but also the wacky, fun NPC vibes that build this like really, really creative and energetic world. Paired with, you know, some music that really reminds me of that SNES PS1 era as well in creativity. So all this to say that like if you love platformers, if you are nostalgic for that genre and that time, play Penny's Big Breakaway. It has some boss fights that I think may not be my favorite, and I'd rather just do purely platforming stuff. And like I said, there are some, you know, shortcomings here and there if you're kind of looking at it in verticals, but in its whole, in its totality, is like I want to go back and play the rest of that game. Excited.
Awesome. Yeah, it looks super cool. Really like how the colors are popping. Just having a look at some screenshots here. Thanks for sharing, dude.
Of course, of course. What do you want to take this next one? Do you want to talk about one of your games?
Yeah, sure. So as you know, like I was on a plane back from Malaysia recently, and I have my iPad, so I loaded it up with a ton of games that I got from Netflix, which I know we've been bantering about in our respective like friend group chats for a while. One of the games that you can get through your Netflix subscription is Terra Nil, and this game. I would say like I would not have picked it up or I would not have caught my eye if we didn't have that podcast previously with Jarrett, where Jarrett mentioned it as one of the games he worked on. So Terra Nil is developed by Free Lives and published by Devolver Digital. The reason why I say like it's not really my thing is because like the icon looks quite serious. I guess like it has like a real like SimCity vibe. And if when you play the game, it basically is it's SimCity but like reverse. You know, instead of building prosperous cities, you are kind of like debuilding and like recultivating land. So you start off with like, you know, just grass or not even grass, it's just barren land actually. And you need to like build certain I don't know what would you call them, like resources, you know, like for example like a windmill, like a windmill so that you can generate energy, and then these other things that attach to the windmill because now they've got the energy that you're generating and can like I guess like fertilize the land or just make it like so that you can grow stuff on it, and then you can build other stuff that like fills the cracks in the floor with water so that turns into a river. So you do all that stuff, and then at the end of it you actually need to destroy everything that you built, because the whole idea is you need to bring life back to this lifeless world, purify the soil, you know, repopulate the oceans and the forests, and then leave without a trace. And it's really therapeutic, you know. So I was like on the plane, you know, no one's disturbing me. The music is really chill. It's not quite lo-fi, but it's kind of like forest music. And you're just like going around clicking stuff. And I think there's like there's a real strategy to this, because was very bad at it. Like I restarted a couple of times because like you build things, but then after a certain point, like you will hit roadblocks of like, oh, maybe you can't build anything left, or you're not able to find all the animals that you wanted because you didn't build like the right level of like forest meets like wetlands and things like that. But then you just start again and that sort of thing.
Yeah, I think like you kind of nailed it, the strategy, because I remember playing this during Steam Next Fest, I think last year, or like in preparation for our podcast with Jared as well. But you nailed it in the sense where I was kind of the first couple levels, I'm like, oh, I'll just put this here, and I'll grow some trees, and like I'll start a stream, and it's beautiful, it's fun, right? And then as I got farther through the game, I'm like, I need to think about where I'm placing stuff a little bit better, because I like this is getting a little bit frustrating. But it's so beautiful because I remember when I watched the trailer, because I think this popped up in a Nintendo Direct or something, and I remember when I first watched it, I was like, that looks like a me game where it's simulation, like you said, and like whether it be the stuff that I love, or it be Sims or Zoo Tycoon or like these like isometric like simulation games. This one seemed like really, really cool and beautiful for the most part. It's like the fact that the grass sways, or when you build a thing and then like it just, you see the wind, you see the flora kind of just move around. It's gorgeous. So I remember I had a great time with Terra Nil. But outside of the gameplay, like how did you find your experience with the game overall? And also, I can't believe you played this on Netflix and iPad. Like that's flipping awesome. That
It's
game,
great.
that kind of game is like at your fingertips in that way,
Yeah. I think it's like what you're saying. Like it sits in this really interesting position where it's not quite the same as your cozy games that have like zero stakes, where you can just like build things based on like cuteness or based on like how you feel. Although I do think it's very therapeutic to see things happen once you build it. Like for example, there's this thing, I don't even know what it's called. I think they all have really technical names, but it basically creates like riverbeds for you. So then it like comes out and then it like launches this thing where it just like digs like a really long hole. And if you position it well next to a river, then the water can flow in. But like all these little things, like the animation is really like endorphin inducing. But then at the same time, it's exactly like you said, it still requires a lot of strategy. You can't just build things based on on a feeling. Although the game does help, I think for certain elements that you drop, the rotating it will show you like an estimation of how much of the land you're going to affect. So then you just like kind of rotate it and then you say, okay, this one will affect 100 plots of land. So this is the best use of my resource, things like that. So yeah, it fits in this sort of in between of like, it feels cozy in that it's relaxing, but you still kind of need to like big brain it. Like you can't just like build your cute little forest. Like it doesn't just work like that. But I guess one more thing I wanted to add, which is something Jared brought up as well, but I've got the facts here. But like the developers, I think as of like July last year, they raised $95,000 for a wildlife trust, which is really cool. So I think originally they pledged like 8% of their Steam profits to go towards like environmental causes. So it's really great to see like a game that is environmentally friendly actually like walk the walk and make an impact in real life too.
Yeah, and I think recently it was also nominated. I mean, I think it's been nominated for quite a couple stuff in general throughout like different shows and whatnot. But I think it was also the Social Impact Award at GDC, if I'm not mistaken. They were also one of the nominees there. So it just goes back to show how like we talk about games, and again, I think every single game in the category of like Impact Awards or what was one of the Game Awards? I can't remember.
It was also Games for Impact.
Games for Impact, yes, that's what it was called. Yeah. So like I think every single game in those kind of categories should get its flowers, and it should honestly be shared throughout rather than just like one kind of taking it away, because every single like game approaches that differently. But yeah, the fact that Terra Nil was able to pour capital back into what the game is trying to say is, I wouldn't say unheard of, but that's just such a beautiful thing that the developers decided to do, because it's also expensive and tough to make games, and especially for here in the region, it's like when your game doesn't make money, sometimes game studios here don't exist anymore. So to be able to find a mechanism whereby like they can still continue to make the game, probably make games, impactful games in the future, whilst also actively contributing back to the thing that they care about and what they're trying to say in the game, is the most beautiful full circle thing ever. So that's like a props to game developers being more than just game developers.
Very cool. It is very, very cool. And I just wanted to shout out again, like folks, if you have a Netflix subscription, there are games there and they're all pretty good quality. It took me a bit of time to find them. Like initially Netflix just kept showing me like Solitaire. I was like, okay, thanks. But you can find cool games like Terra Nil. You can find really cool immersive games that like would normally be on Steam, and then they've just been ported to mobile. So definitely check it out. I mean, it's free if you already have the subscription that you're paying for anyway.
Yeah, go play Hades that just dropped on Netflix, and go play one of my favorite games of last year, Immortality. Like that is some mind-blowing stuff. Like go play Terra Nil, go play Hades, go play Immortality, and then when you're feeling a little bit like a little bored from that kind of stuff, go play some GTA, because some like just randomly on a Tuesday or something they dropped like a couple GTA games on Netflix games. Like I know we chatted about this, but like what an interesting strategy and for Netflix to have.
Yeah, I've got that loaded on my app. Maybe that will be my next review, like San Andreas, like, I don't know, 15 years later or whatever it is on an iPad.
Yeah, exactly.
All right, what else have you played? I think you've got one really cool game.
I want to tell this story to you, Rino. Actually, like this is a fun one for the 20M podcast. As y'all know, or maybe some of y'all might not know who are listening, in addition to the podcast format, we churn out shorts like based off of some of the stuff here, and they range from Rino rambling about Hoyoverse and Genshin stuff, which always attracts not controversy but a lot of views. And then we go super niche and like we talk about some other stuff. But one of the things we did talk about is Zoo Tycoon, one of my favorite games of all time. And this game has been haunting me over the past month because it's been coming up in conversations so often. But when we put out a short about Zoo Tycoon like months ago, it did okay. And like I think a lot of people are banking nostalgia for that kind of stuff. It was just me reminiscing about Zoo Tycoon. But we had a developer reach out to us very recently and said, hey, do you want to try out our game instead? And this developer is Singaporean-based Springloaded, which we're both familiar with. I know we've been following Springloaded stuff for the past couple of years, but they basically came out with a game very recently called Let's Build a Zoo. And they saw that short and was like, hey, try out this game because we also have marine expansion and dinosaur stuff as well. So it's like, or I think it was like dinosaur stuff specifically is what they said. So I've been playing Let's Build a Zoo, courtesy of the folks at Springloaded, which is basically, to me, the way that I've been pitching it to my friends is a spiritual successor to Zoo Tycoon that is similar in so many ways, but also different and takes the formula and evolves it in a way that other Zoo Tycoon spiritual successors that have attempted this format maybe did not nail per se. So I've been playing that. But Rino, you're familiar with Let's Build a Zoo, right?
I know of the name, but I don't have the background that you do or the passion that you do for Zoo Tycoon. So I think you're definitely in the best position to be playing this and letting us know what it's about, how it differs from Zoo Tycoon, what it takes inspiration from there, and I guess does it hold up for the people in your Zoo Tycoon anonymous group?
Zoo Tycoon, like the Zoo Tycoon collective, please, on Reddit. The 200 people on the Zoo Tycoon Reddit, like rise up, let's build a zoo. No, so I think the first one that I'll mention is that the only other game that's in this category is the game by Frontier Digital. Oh my god, it's gonna kill me. Commenters, please don't roast me.
Planet Zoo.
Planet Zoo, yes. So that one I think is a lot more akin
Zoo
to
genre.
Yeah, Zoo Tycoon 2, where it's like 3D. I think it takes the formula. I haven't tried that game yet, but that one I think is a little bit more visually aesthetic, like similar to Zoo Tycoon 2. Let's Build a Zoo is so much like Zoo Tycoon 1, where it's 2D, it's pixel art, and you start in the same exact way where you walk through the tutorial, you choose a plot of land, you're a zoo owner, and all you have to do is start building the zoo, all the way from, for those that are unfamiliar with this genre of games, right? It starts with building pens for your animals, and then also facilities for your guests, and then hiring zookeepers, hiring service staff, hiring, like changing the ticket prices on your zoo, as well as like furthering research after every day to let you acquire and build new stuff, which include new animals, new terrains, new facilities, et cetera, to go from like a very humble small zoo with only 2 pigs to like a giant amusement park of animal goodness. So that's the basic formula for these zoo games. But I'll just skip directly to why I think Let's Build a Zoo is something special, is that it not only takes that formula, but it like not only gives you the hit of nostalgia that you need, which is you see so many people in the park once you're like at a very like a larger stage of the game, but like it's just overwhelming the amount of people. Some people are happy, some people are not happy. Like the lion exhibit is doing really well, but you look over to your hyena exhibit and they're like malnourished and they're like out of water because the zookeeper can't access the zone because I realized that I put a tree in front of the gate or whatever. So that reminds me so much of the beauty of the OG Zoo Tycoon, where it's overwhelming yet it's just so satisfying to solve. But they take it a step further, whereby like there's some new like 2020 mechanics that are in there that are just weird, wacky, and fun that I don't think the OG Zoo Tycoon could do, which is one of my favorite things is splicing. So you can like combine animals as well. So I've bred a snake duck, and that is one of the animals that's in my. It's got a duck head and snake body. So it's very normal actually for a zoo to have, and it's just hilarious how you can do that kind of stuff. You can obviously breed and find different variations of animals, which is quite awesome. But to me, it like proves like where tech is and where our direction is, if you will. Like there's hundreds of spliced animals that you could create, and the possibilities are endless. So it's so fun and it's so beautiful.
That is such a 2020 wacky thing to do. So like the plot starts off as, oh, you're a zoo owner, just casually, and then suddenly it's like you're like an evil scientist, like splicing DNA and creating new animals.
Well, I'll take you one step further. It's like also one of those things where you have a morality meter, And so
You have a
sometimes
morality
you'll
meter.
find like, well, one, it's like pollution, where sometimes if you don't have enough trees or you don't have turbines or like waste management, like your morality like will go down. So you're causing negative externality. Then the other thing is like sometimes a black market dealer will be walking around in the zoo and it's like, hey, I can paint your little duck to look like a peacock, and then you can lie to your zoo people, like your
Oh my
guests
lord.
to pretend like you have a peacock in here, you know? And I'm like, this sounds like it'll make me a lot of money. So I will think about it. You know what I mean?
Wow. No, that's crazy. Like, man, real life needs to like companies need to have morality meters like this. What is going
Yeah, exactly. So it's been so much fun, but I don't have too much yet to say about it because again, I haven't had the chance to get the expansions. Like I think I just have the base game, so I don't have the expansion. So I do want to try out the Dino expansion pack, but it's just so much fun and so nostalgic, and I am really enjoying it so far. It's been really easy to play. So major love to the Springloaded folks for seeing that Zoo Tycoon video and knowing that it would totally get me, because I'm genuinely saying that like every Zoo Tycoon fan needs to play Let's Build a Zoo, because it takes the original Zoo Tycoon 1 formula and just elevates it in so many different ways.
Yeah, it's amazing. And I do really like the art. It's super, super cute.
Yeah, absolutely. And a Singaporean dev. So
Yeah.
like I know the majority of their team at least is in Singapore. So major love to some Southeast Asian developers as well.
For sure, for sure. All right, I think I just have one more game to add before we wrap things up. So it's been PAX East over in North America, and they've got their Steam showcase up. So I went to check it out, and this is a game that I already knew about and already saw in person, but just never had the chance to play it in person until now. Now that it's on the demo for PAX East. So this is Venture to the Wild by Cut to Bits, but being published by Aniplex.
Oh, cool.
It's yeah, I actually think this could be like an RF game because it is a platformer. They call it a 2.5D Metroidvania. The art style looks like Tim Burton, and the music is kind of that creepy, kooky, but also kind of cute at the same time. And I don't know if we talked about it in the podcast because I definitely saw them at Bit Summit last year, but I didn't get a chance to play it. But basically, they call it a 2.5D Metroidvania, so it is a platforming game. But what makes it really cool is that like even though you're kind of like on this 2D plane, you can actually go forwards and backwards into separate planes. So that gives you a bit more dynamism. And but what makes it I think really RF like is because it feels very Tim Burton, and the characters all have like really like cute but like there's something a bit off kind of feeling, just like Nightmare Before Christmas vibes. So your main character is a guy. He wears like a deer mask, and he lives in this town, and something happens where the town is taken over by what they call the Vial, which is kind of like a corrupting force. And it affects your character. So like one of his arms has the vial on it, but it kind of gives him superpowers. But basically he's fighting through all these different monsters and everything that's popped up because of the vial, and he's looking for his friend who is missing. Her name is Ella. So the music is great. I think it's really haunting, at least for the parts I played, which is the demo, which I think is only about a 15-20 minute demo of the game. But it really gives you a good sense of what to expect in terms of the platforming, I think in terms of the difficulty and all the different features it has, like what you can do with your character. Like I mentioned, one of the arms is also like a grappling hook in a way. So it's like a little, I think it's like a vine of some sort, and then you can like whip it to the top and then hook to something. I know you're like freaking out right now, and then like that can help you traverse across the map as well. So things like that are really cool.
You literally described one of my perfect games of all time. Like it's the fact that it's again the Metroidvania aspect that kind of like is a genre that I've been growing to love the past couple of years. But the fact that you're right, it's like this creepy. I was just watching the trailer, right? It's like this creepy Tim Burton. I love Tim Burton art and I love Tim Burton worlds. Like, let me tell you how much I've cried to Edward Scissorhands over the past like couple of years, right? But it's a BioShock thing. The fact that one arm has like the plasmids or like the powers, if you will, that's BioShock, dude. And the fact that you can grapple, I know this one's probably a stretch, and this one, the comments can tear me apart for it, but it's like, does that not sound like BioShock Infinite, where you can grapple with your left hand as well? Come on.
Everything's BioShock reference.
Is this out yet? Because this looks flipping awesome, and like I'm like immediately hyped for it.
It'll be out in May, I believe. So this year, which is pretty soon considering I've been following this game, I think, since the start of 2022 or somewhere around there. The person at the studio who I'm like internet friends with is a guy named Masao Kobayashi. So he's also Game Awards Future Class, I think the year before me. He's been really nice. I managed to kind of say hi to him over at Bit Summit, but the game did really well from what I can see from the Japanese audience. So hopefully it does really well worldwide too. There is one last thing I wanted to add is that from what I remember with talking to Masao is like they worked or they still work at like a kind of shared office space, and they shared it with some pretty well-known like comic book artists. So part of their Kickstarter campaign to get people to buy the game was like they bundled it with comic books, like physical ones. So I have the digital version because like when I calculated shipping costs to Japan, it became like 3 times more expensive than the actual comic book. So it was pretty disappointing. But basically, yeah, they worked with like 4 different comic book artists who drew I think the first like part 1 or chapter 1 of the game, and they all have different styles. So like depending on which one you backed, you get like a different comic. You can probably still get it online anyway because I think it did really well. But it's really cool to see like this game clearly really pays a lot of attention to art, and then they collaborate with like other types of artists, and they produce like other kinds of things because the art style I think or the premise of the game really lends very well to the comic book format.
I'm getting chills. You're literally describing things that I love. Like that is awesome. It's like how many times I go to the comic store every month. Well, actually, that's a lie. I go once a month. Like true comic book people to pick up your pull list, you know what I mean? But yeah, the fact that you said like it's interdisciplinary, if you will, it's like where it's like games don't just have to be games, where like you see a lot of collaborations and usually they're a little bit like they fall flat, but to have a game like this kind of weave that in more naturally is just, you're right, that's a definition of art. It's like to explore these kinds of things creatively is man. It's
awesome.
so
You
cool.
should
I'm
definitely check
so
it out.
excited for this one.
You and anyone else who's listening, the demo should still be up on Steam at least by the time this gets released. And it's really quite short. And you can also, I realized like when you finish the demo, you go back to your save file. It has the time there because I guess you can kind of speed run through it. I took like a really long time, so hopefully you'll fare better than me.
No, that's awesome. I'm really like, I love the way that you know exactly how to speak my language. But again, just to find games like this that I get excited by, this is instantly going on my wish list. So God bless, and also like you said, major love to the folks who are showcasing at PAX, right? Because games like this like really shine when you have trade shows as well, where more people can play it, get in the hands of more folks, but also just tour your game prior to release. I bet is got to be a great feeling for the devs. So I'm excited for this and more games to come out over the next couple weeks.
Absolutely. All right. Well, I think that makes this week's episode really short and sweet one, but we covered quite a lot of games, so make sure you check all of them out. And while you're here, make sure you check out our previous episode where we talk about even more games that were by women-led studios, and they're all really cool as well.
Yeah, absolutely. And thanks for all the love, everybody. We've been feeling the love on the personal side. I know we've been like moving around a little bit, meeting up with some industry friends. So thanks everybody who are listening. It means the world to us that you're subscribed, that you watch our stuff or follow our social platforms. And if you haven't, it's at 20M podcast across socials. But just lovely to hear so many of your kind words. But again, start the conversation. Drop a comment if any of these games sounded exciting to you. Let's get the ball rolling. Let's build some of that community out here, and let's interweave some of your thoughts into our episodes too, because we definitely want to interact with y'all even more than just that one-off. Like I said, comment here and there. It's like, hey, your note there is in episode 4 was really dumb. Which is like I get too often.
Thank you. All right, take care, everyone. See you all soon. Bye.
Bye. We need an outro line. 20 again. We workshopped it last time, but I feel like we need to bring it back.